Hey everybody, this is Leslie Kuster, and we are live on She Rises. We're live to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and my guest who's going to come on right now will also be live to her platforms, which is why I love StreamYard so much, and it's so much fun. I am the best-selling author of a new book, Seven Keys to Seven Figures, the Women Entrepreneur's Guide to Money and Freedom. And I'm giving away a free resource list that if you look at the ticker at the bottom, go and grab that. It's basically I opened up, my Rolodex and took out like the best podcasts and the best books that I've read and coaches that I've worked with, and even talking about finances, investments, real estate, and all that. So definitely check it out. Today, I have like one of my favorite people. I mean, she is a rock star. Her name is Paula Rizzo, and Paula is an Emmy Award winning television producer. She is an author also of the best-selling book Blissful Thinking and also Blissful Living. She's a media trainer, a speaker. She has a whole learning thing going on LinkedIn. She's one of their top instructors, and she hosts that live. And she also is the teacher and trainer of Media Ready authors. She works with a lot of authors. So I'm really happy to have Paula on today. She's helped me personally as well in, learning how to do media and how to actually do podcasts and how to do something like we're doing right now. So I'm really excited to have Paula here today. So I'm now going to bring her on. Hey, Paula.
Hello. What a nice intro. Thank you very much. Well, it has been so wonderful to see your journey from just an idea to an author. I mean, we met many, many years ago when it was just a little bud of an idea.
I know, and that's the beautiful thing about life. You have little tiny inspirations, right? Like little things, I like to call them like the what ifs, like what if I started a business, or what if I left that relationship, or
Yep.
what if, right? And if you follow kind of these like what ifs and these wonders, it takes you to all kinds of new places. So yes, you and I met at an Ali Brown workshop
Mhm.
years ago. You really encouraged me to actually get help. I told you I had an idea. I want to write a book, and you encouraged me to get help with like a type of company that helps you write and edit and all that. And I did it, and I
Yeah.
published this year, and you've been so helpful to it. So I really wanted you on today, Paula. You are a star when it comes to
Oh.
getting in front of cameras. I mean, you've been on both sides of it. You've been a television producer, which is incredible. And you are always now behind the camera yourself teaching,
Mhm.
and you're training other people to get behind the camera. So when I told you I wanted to do the show, She Rises, I wanted it to be called She Rises, Giving Women Visibility,
Mhm.
because I suffered a lot with fear around visibility, and at the same time, like wanting to be noticed and wanting to be visible and all that kind of stuff. So, can you talk about, kind of how you started? You went from television producer to your own thing now as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and why you even want to help authors, women, men, on being more visible. Why is that something important, would you say?
Oh, it breaks my heart when people say no to media. There's so many people who I've come across through the years, authors who have amazing, wonderful books that could literally change someone's life, but they're too afraid to go on camera, or they're too afraid to do a video, or they're too afraid, and they just say no. And then I always think about all the, hundreds, even if it was not even hundreds, thousands, millions of people or 5 people who could have benefited from that message and didn't get to hear it. And
Mhm.
when I was a television producer, I had a very limited amount of time to be able to work with somebody to get them, ready for their 2-minute segment or whatever it was. And I had to say no to a lot of people who were not ready. And it was unfortunate because, they had great stories, they had great books, but they weren't ready for what I needed them to do, and so they were a no. And so when I decided to start my own business about 6.5 years ago now, I thought, if I could help anybody, authors specifically, but anyone, to get out there and to feel less intimidated, because the world needs to hear what you have to say. It's a public service. You've written this amazing book and you have all of these great ideas. How will people know about it unless you're its biggest fan? And so, I realize that it does take a lot. Not everybody is, geared, especially authors, writers. They're not always geared to be in front of the camera, right? It's not always their first most favorite thing to do. But it really is necessary to be able to help people to get out there. And I know from myself, I'm an author as well. My first book, Listful Thinking, as you mentioned, is now 9 years old. It's been around for a while. And I know, and it's funny because I still, talk to a lot of the people who came to that first book event and who was there from the beginning. And I was still a television producer at the time. So it was sort of the side hustle. And so I know from being an author what it's like to have to go out there and promote your book and to show up to book events where people may or may not show up. And what are you going to say and how are you going to present it? And that's, the world has changed so much now that things are digital, and virtual. You can have a virtual book launch like you did. And, I did a virtual book launch for my second book, Listful Living. It was in 2019 before people were doing that, and so I sort of have always been the guinea pig for myself. And now I try to do that, give my clients ideas and tips and tricks in that way.
I love that. You said before that it breaks your heart and that often people are just not even ready. They want to do media, but they're not ready. Can you give examples? What are you talking about? Why does someone have to be ready?
Oh my gosh. Well, if you want to be on TV and you don't look great on camera and you don't have a great setup, it's not going to be a yes. The world has changed so much. It used to be when I was a TV producer, people would come into the studio, very rarely did we do remotes like this, something where it was, you weren't in the studio. Now it's the norm. So now, producers, especially in television, want to know, are you ready to go as soon as, we say go? Do you have a great setup? Do you have a good microphone? Is your lighting good? Do you have a nice background? All of those things matter. Can you string together a sentence? That's the most important thing. You don't want someone who's going to get on and go on and on and on when you have a 2-minute segment and they have to get to it quickly. Those are things that you can't teach when you're a producer. You need someone who's ready.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said, with looking right and setting up your camera and lighting and all that stuff, sounds really easy, but my own personal experience of it, it has taken me, I think, a few years to sort of get it. And when we were backstage together, Paula, you were like, "Oh, it looks really good." And I'm like, "Well, this was not by accident. It actually is because of what you taught me." So actually, I think this is a good example to do, looking at my setup right now and the things you teach.
Yeah.
Can you give some feedback or point out aspects of it that work or doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to have light in front of your face, not behind you, and you obviously are very well lit. I also have a light right in front of me. You want to have some depth between you and the background, which you definitely do. You have a nice background. Your books are there, which is very important for an author, to be able to showcase what you have there, and to wear a bright color. Obviously, the two of us are in bright colors. This is no accident, but this is part of the look. You are part of your setup, right? And so you want to definitely stand out and have colors that that you look good in and that you feel confident in. If you wear black or you wear white, it doesn't always look so great. And I've had a lot of clients who fight me on it because they like to wear black. I get it. But it sort of drowns out the excitement, and it makes it a little bit less exciting to look at. So you definitely want to pick a color. Same for me with my background. I just moved into this apartment and I designed this specifically for these types of calls because I knew, I do media a lot myself as well. But also if I'm teaching people, I need to practice what I preach. I need to be able to show that this is important, and it makes a big difference. People see your setup and you look professional right from the get-go. It makes a difference.
Yeah. And what do you think about fake screens behind you? I see a lot of people with not the green thing, but
Uh-huh.
like a book background. And I can often tell it is fake. What do you think of
It
that?
looks fake. Yeah, I always say no. During the pandemic, I think people were very excited to play around with the features on their computer and on Zoom and all of that, and it was sort of like a fun thing to look like you were in outer space or whatever it was. But it's just for subject matter experts, it's not authentic. We know you're at home. We know you're in a hotel room. Like we get it, right? That it's better to not blur the background and to have a great setup, and you can't always have a great setup. There are times when maybe you're traveling and you're doing the best you possibly can, and that's fine too, as long as you have light in front of you and maybe you have something a little bit interesting behind you, a plant or something that you can kind of steal from the lobby or whatever it is. You could work on that, but I would say try to keep your background as authentic as you possibly can, because that's part of this. You want people to know, like, and trust you, right? And that's part of it. If I don't know what's going on behind you with that blurred background, it just makes me a little curious.
That's true. That's true. You don't kind of trust it exactly. I was on Zoom with somebody the other day and he had like this tropical background and he's going in and out of the picture
Yes,
so you can really tell that it's completely fake. So it actually made me wonder, like, is his house so bad? Like,
I
is he
know.
like a hoarder or like,
Totally.
you
It's
know
so
what I mean?
distracting. It really is. It's like
Yeah.
we're not now having a conversation. Now I'm just like wondering what the deal is here.
Yeah, I'm like wondering exactly, like maybe he's really a slob, this guy,
Right.
or whatever. So I think that's like a really a good point. The first time I ever went on video, I mean, I think I recorded it. It wasn't even live. I
Yeah.
mean, live, I mean, that's a whole other thing, right?
Right.
Which is kind of why I wanted to do this live, because we're talking about visibility and fear of visibility. But the first time I did a recorded video, I think I recorded it like 10 times and then maybe took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 days to even post it
Right.
to a private group of about 10 people. So we're not even talking
Yeah.
about to the world. There was like so much fear I had. So let me ask you about fear,
Mhm.
because I think for most people, even if they're experienced going behind a camera, I think there's always fear involved in it. So you train, how do you, I'm sure that comes up with your clients. So how do you help in that area?
Yeah, it's fear of judgment, fear of, oh, what will people think of me? Oh, imposter syndrome. Am
Mm.
I really the person who should be talking about this? Aren't other people talking about this? Look, I didn't invent lists. I just talk about them more than everybody else. It's just, it's fine.
I love that.
So, when you sort of have to take a step back and not take yourself so seriously, right? I mean, there is a reason you decided to put this book together and put it out into the world, and it's to be of service. And so I think when we sort of come back to that idea that you're here to teach somebody something, and if they don't get to see you, they don't get to learn it. And so how
Mhm.
dare you keep it from them? It's not about you, it's about them. It's about the people who could be benefiting from this. Wouldn't you have loved something like this? A lot of times people write books because they would have loved the message. They needed it when they were going through whatever it was. And so I always say, wouldn't you have loved to have a guide like this done for you? But how would you have known about it if someone didn't tell you? That's your
Yeah.
role now, right? You are the one. It's up to you. And the spotlight is sort of taken off you in a way and put onto the audience to say, how can I
Mm.
serve them? How can I be, helpful to them? Is there one person that I can reach? And a lot of times people will also get intimidated because, maybe no one shows up to their live event or no one shows up, to their thing. And it almost doesn't matter, because that piece of media will live on, hopefully, for a long time. And you'll be able to, repurpose it and to share it with other people and to have your message continue to go on, even if people weren't there right in the very, very beginning. So people get discouraged by that. And I never do. I do a live stream show myself too. Sometimes I do it live, sometimes I pre record it. And I almost never care if anyone shows up live because for me, I'm like, well, I'm going to share this a million different ways. Somebody will see it.
Yeah, I love that. I actually was at a networking event this morning, and the one of people women who was there, she was like, "Oh, I saw that your She Rises, and I was able to see it when you weren't live." And
Uh-huh.
so Yeah, I love that point that, you never know when somebody's going to see it, and that it helps them. And when I was starting on my book, Christine Carlson
Mhm.
from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff was one of my editors. And she just said, listen, maybe someone's going to find your book one day in a garage sale,
Right.
and it's going to like change their life, or give them hope, or
Definitely.
whatever it's going to be.
You
So,
never know. I mean, almost, my book is almost out 10 years. I still get emails from people. I
well,
still yeah, people still say, "Oh, I use that book all the time," or "I just found it." It's been translated into a lot of different languages. I get emails from people all over the world saying, "We just picked it up. We just read it. Now I'm doing this." A lot of students, I can, make my list better at school, or I just got into college or whatever it is. It really it's a lasting legacy as an author. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to get your work out into the world like that and touch people and help them. And you just never know. I mean, there are people who will never tell you that they read your book, and you'll never hear about it, but there's a lot out there, that you're doing, and if you're not giving it its best shot, a lot of people will miss it.
yeah. When you say media, like, what does that mean exactly? Is that just, I mean, television, or what does media mean these
It's
days?
changed so much. It used to be traditional, it used to be TV, radio, magazines, newspaper. That was it, right? Now, podcasts, you could do your own live stream show. This is media,
Yeah. Mhm.
blogs, anything like that, social media, the things that you do. And it's really important for people, especially authors, to sort of take on the role, I always say, of producer. To
Yeah.
think about, how can I be the best producer possible of of my own content? How can I take my book or whatever it is that I've done and repurpose that in a different way for a different audience? Because some people will much more likely listen to an interview like this than read the whole book, let's just say.
Yeah.
But then they'll like you and they'll say, "Oh, I like that Leslie. She's smart. She's got a lot of good things. I'll buy the book. I like her." That's how it happens.
Mhm.
And so you don't know where you'll catch people or how they'll find you, but it's good to be out there and to create and produce your own media, and then you can use that to pitch traditional media, right? So a lot of times I've had where I write an article or I write something and then I use that to pitch TV and say, "Hey, look, I could talk about this topic. I wrote a whole article about it. What do you think?" And they'll say, "Okay, cool. That sounds good." So you're really mining a lot of those ideas and those pitches from things that you're already doing. Don't hold it back and say, "Oh, this is a really good idea. I'll hold this in case I ever get on TV." Don't do that. Just share, share, share. Somebody will see it, someone will miss it. It'll be at a different time. And it just, as much as you can possibly put out there, do it. And media begets media. As soon as you start to do one thing, then someone hears you on this podcast and they want you on that podcast. It just keeps going from there.
It just keeps going. I love that, and that's the pumping the water kind of thing, that sometimes you just have to pump that water and you don't see anything coming out,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, after many, many, many pumps, or days, weeks, or even years,
for sure.
something starts coming out there.
Definitely.
So,
The abundance mindset.
Paula, you made a big pivot. Okay, so you had a job, right? You were
Mhm.
a TV producer, you got a paycheck, all that kind of stuff. And you decided to like leave, right? And start your own thing and be an entrepreneur, something that takes some guts to do, right? And courage to do. Can you talk a bit about that? Why did you do that? And how has the journey been for you?
Well, when you and I met, I was just thinking about it. And so
Mm,
it was a wonderful time to see a woman entrepreneur who was very successful, who had done this herself. We were in a room with a lot of women who had done this. And so, to see those examples and to see what was possible was really important for me. And so that's always stuck with me. You've given me some really great business advice through the years, so I do very much appreciate that. But it's a lot of seeing what's possible, knowing that other people have done this before you, that makes it a little less scary. It's still terrifying, when you first go out on your own, but I knew I was ready because I had been building, the book had come out. I was still working in television and I had been building and building, little side hustles on the side and doing speaking engagements and all this other sort of fun stuff. And I always loved my job. I always loved being a producer. But I realized that the thing that sustained me for so long was now holding me back.
Mhm.
And so I knew I had to let it go. I didn't want my boss's job. I didn't want the next person's job. I was happy where I was. I enjoyed what I was doing. I was ready for something else.
Mm.
And so when I gave my notice, everyone was like, "Oh, we wondered when you would go." So, like, they all knew, you know?
Wow, interesting. Wow. Why is that? Were you bored? They saw you were bored or that they saw
They
that
saw I
you
was
had
doing
more
so
to
many other
offer?
things, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I was already building my brand, I had my book had been out at that point by the time I left, maybe 4 years, I had been doing a lot of media, a lot of other stuff besides, yes, I would come to work and do my job, but then they saw after work, I was doing all of these events, and I was hosting things, and I was doing a lot of, additional things. It just became too much to do all of it really
yeah,
well, and I
yes.
felt like if I'm gonna try this, if I'm gonna do it, I need to go. And I knew, because I'm good at productivity and list making, I was like, I will be very organized about how I get things done. I think I'd be really good at working from home. I think I'd be really good at working for myself. And I was right. I really designed it that way.
Yeah, I love that. I think you and I both really like Excel, which is a little
Ah,
unusual. Not
yes, right.
everybody likes detailed orientated people, right?
Yes. I'm always making a spreadsheet for something. Yes.
I love that. Well, it takes courage, and it isn't always easy, is it? Being your own boss and
No.
creating your own programs and everything else that you're doing.
Yeah.
So, what would you say for helping more people become visible in terms of, you know, that when you have your own business, certainly if you're a coach, right? That is something because then you're selling yourself. But
Right.
even me, who is selling a product-based business, even I have had to be visible with the product.
Yeah.
And certainly now that I have a book out, I've had to be really visible with it. So how can people just kind of start? Like you have a book coming out, or you're
Right.
starting to be a coach, or you see all these people on social media doing videos or reels or whatever, and you just don't know what to do or how to begin.
Mhm.
What would you do?
I would make a list, of course.
Of course, you would make a list.
I can't help myself, but it's true, I would. I would make a list, of all of the questions that I'm most frequently asked. So, you're a subject matter expert, and people ask you questions. You're a coach, you're whatever, what are the questions that you keep answering again and again? What are those questions? Write those questions down.
Mhm,
Now, how do you want to answer those questions? Do you want to write a blog post? Do you want to do a video? Do you want to start a little podcast and do audio? Like, what speaks to you? What would make you do it, right? Not everybody likes to write. And so maybe writing a blog is not the most exciting thing. But some people, maybe they just want to dictate it and say, okay, this is how I'd answer that question. And then that becomes the blog. And so thinking about, could you think of 10 things? And then just start putting those things out there and see if you get a reaction. You may not, because
mhm.
sometimes the most exciting thing that you're like, this is gonna do it, it's gonna break the internet, people are gonna love it, and you hear nothing. And then the things that you're like, this was a thing I didn't even want to do. I almost didn't post it. That's the thing that ends up being a thing that people love. So sometimes you can't have a formula for these things. But I think people get stuck on the what would I talk about? What would I do?
Mhm.
How could I contribute? And so that's why I always say, what do people always ask you? What are the questions that you answer the most? Because that you've probably answered a million times, and it other people will have that same question. So it'll be interesting to see how that content can continue on. You had mentioned before that you did a few videos and did 7, 8, 9 takes. That's not unusual. It's what most people do. I worked with a professional TV, anchors and reporters. Unless they're live, they're doing things over and over and over again to make sure it's perfect. And these are people who are on camera all the time. So it's not
Mhm.
unusual to not get it in one take. It's not the way that it usually works. So to do that, to practice and to know maybe no one needs to see this video. Maybe this is just something I'm doing just to train myself. I mean, I make all my clients do this and they send me the videos and it's just for us. And so nobody else sees them until they're ready.
Yes, yes, I love that. So is there is there a platform these days that you think are really good? Like, you should definitely do this platform or don't bother with this platform or do all the platforms.
I
Like, do
don't
you have any
know.
thoughts on
It
that?
depends. Like, I feel like people are so hard on themselves about not being on everywhere and not doing TikTok and not doing Instagram and not doing, and I'm very much like, what do you like to do? Like, where do you like to hang out? Like, I like to hang out on LinkedIn, and I like Instagram. Am
Yeah.
I on the other platforms? Yes, because I've always been and I just kind of keep doing it. But those are my two favorites. I enjoy it. So I feel like then I want to show up there. But it's also important to see who are your core listeners, or who are your core audience. Where are they? You want to be where they are, right? And so if they're not on Facebook, then why bother? So really thinking about that, but to take a step back and say, okay, what do you actually enjoy? What would you like to engage? And then just do that.
Yeah, and that's how this show happened because when I was, promoting and marketing the book, I was on a lot of podcasts, and I
Mhm.
realized that was I loved it. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved to. It's like being with a girlfriend because I did all woman stuff,
Yep.
and just like you and I, and we do this anyway. Just
Mhm.
get on a call with a friend, get on a Zoom with a friend, and you just talk about business, which is so fun anyway, and
Yes.
being an entrepreneur. And then I thought, well, let me just do that because this is what I really love. And this is how this show actually evolved.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, exactly. You have to do something that actually is sort of fun for you as well.
Then you'll keep doing it. I mean, look, you've done episode after episode, week after week, because you enjoy it, because you like it. If you hated this, it wouldn't happen. For someone else, they may like to write. So maybe they would have done an interview and sent me a bunch of questions and said, okay, could you answer these questions? And I'll turn it into an article or a blog. And that's fine too. You have to get to know yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So we're just going to wrap up now. Are you working on anything or anything you want to share with anybody that you're doing and invite them to have a look at what Paula Riz is doing these days?
Sure. Yes. Well, I do have a freebie. If you
Mhm.
go to paularizzo.com/10Q, there is the 10 questions every author needs to answer in the media,
Ooh.
so that you'll be able to be prepared, because the truth is, like, they ask the same kinds of questions all the time. I know this. And so you need to be able to have thought of it. Everyone thinks, oh, I'll be great. I'll be able to talk about my book. I'm working on fiction right now. And the book is with a line editor. So we're in I'm pretty far along. And people ask me all the time, what's the book about? And I'm like, I do this for a living and I help other people, and I can't do it. I can't tell you what it's about yet. Like, I have not formed it in my mind. I understand it's difficult to talk about your book and what you do and all of that. So if you go to paularizzo.com/10Q, you can check that out and
Yes,
at least think it
absolutely.
through.
Yeah, and if you didn't catch that, email me at leslie@lesliekuster.com, and I'll introduce you and give you a link to Paula's 10 questions that you should ask yourself when you're gonna talk to media basically there.
Yeah, get all set up for it. And of course, check me out on LinkedIn. I have a bunch of productivity courses on LinkedIn Learning. And yeah, that's where
Yeah.
I'm going to be.
Thank you so much, Paula. Yeah, Paula is an amazing trainer. She really knows this business like backwards and forwards from both sides, from the sides of being a producer, from the side of presenting herself, and from the side of training people to speak with media. So follow her, get on her newsletter. She has a fantastic newsletter that I read myself. She's also a reader, like most authors, I think, are readers.
Yes,
I'm a big reader. She's always talking about the books she's read and novels she's read and
exactly.
traveling she's done. So it's a really interesting newsletter. So definitely follow her and get on her email list as well.
Thank you,
So
Leslie.
thank you, Paula. Thank you so much for being here. Thank
Of
you,
course.
everybody, for being here at She Rises. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can email me at leslie@lesliekuster.com. And that's where you can go and get the free resource list as well. And I will see you on the next She Rises. Bye bye, everybody.